You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com, U being the letter U. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm taking a look at the equity markets in North America, and I'm calling it the worst of times, the best of times over just 3 days.
Yeah, that's a pretty good description of it. And it's not just equities, of course. I mean, at least they're bouncing, whereas most commodities are pretty much down for the count now. We've seen oil, at least the U.S. oil price, that's under $39 as you and I talk. And I know that the price of oil in Canada is under 25 right now. And then we've seen the price of gold, which was starting to rally, turn around and head back lower. And all the metals, everything from a copper to palladium to you name it, things look bad. And so at least the stocks have rallied back a little bit. And so I don't think that we'll actually see a V-shaped bottom, but I think we're in an area where a bottom can begin.
Do you think this will pressure the Fed not to raise interest rates?
If they're smart, it would. I mean, they might have talked themselves into a corner, because they've been leading the market on saying, in September, we're going to raise interest rates. And so everybody says, yes, yes, yes. They prepare. If the Fed doesn't raise, that could perhaps create a crisis of confidence. However, I would point out that there's enough chipping away at confidence right now that not raising would actually be a smart thing to do. We've had problems from China, the U.S., and in fact, what we're seeing in the bond markets right now is pretty much like a tightening anyway, without the Fed having to do anything, just because everyone wants bonds right now. So looking at this stuff, I think that they would be smart not to raise. Put it off to December maybe. If this is just a passing phase in the market and things are going to work them out and like things will actually work out pretty soon, then that's just a couple months. It won't make a real difference. And in the meantime, you can keep plenty of liquidity in there because it's not like they have a lot of other tools, I think, at this point. And some people are saying that we're actually going to see another round of like quantitative easing. I can't imagine the Fed doing that, but then again, I can't imagine a lot of the things they do. So who knows? Maybe that's the next thing we'll see happen if things go from shaky to worse.
What are investors to do right now?
Well, actually, I had a long blog post on this where I just tell people to make shopping lists of things they would really like to own, and they just find the best of them, like pick maybe 5 stocks and put in stink bids. And so if the market really sells off hard and some price where you'd love to own that thing, maybe it'll get hit. There's a bunch of great brand name, fantastic stocks from Netflix to Amazon to Celgene to you name it. Some of them actually pay nice dividends when you look at Procter & Gamble. That's really sold off and like stuff like that. So there are a lot of great stocks that are on sale. Some pay nice dividends, which is always very nice, and those dividends are larger because of the sell-off. So I think people should make their shopping list and just put in a few stink bids. Maybe we'll get another rip to the downside. If we do, then your stink bids can get filled, and longer term the trend's going to be up. So that actually would be a good thing to do.
Is it times like this that the Warren Buffetts of the world really start to win?
Well, we know that he doesn't look at the market, on a real day-to-day basis. He looks for value, right? And so I think this is a great time for him because there are going to be some much better values, especially if this goes on longer than most people think. Now, I'm in the camp that says this really won't last that long. I would expect by the end of the month, of course, we're speaking in August, but let's say by the end of September, this will have worked out. And so there'll be a interim period where a lot of things will be on sale. I think Warren Buffett will probably take advantage of it. I think a lot of big name investors will take advantage of it because the underlying economic news, continues to be good. maybe not in China, but it's not terrible in China either. It's just things are slowing down over there. Here in North America, the underlying news tends to be very good. Europe is actually starting to pick up a little bit. So when you look at those things, if the underlying economy is okay, then maybe you do want to buy on the pullbacks. That's just the way I would look at it. That doesn't mean all things should be bought. For example, I think oil prices will stay lower for longer, and I've really been saying this for quite some time, so that's not changing my tune. So oil producers, unless they're paying you a big fat dividend and can cover that dividend, might not be something that you want to pick up at the present time.
Now, what about somebody like a Shell where they've decided they're going to drill in the Arctic? It's going to cost them $7 billion to do that. Is that crazy in today's prices, or are they taking a look 10 years down the road when that thing actually will go into production?
Well, yes, you have hit the nail on the head. It's crazy at today's prices, but down the road, prices will go higher. I was just reading today that $600 billion worth of oil projects have been canceled since the beginning of the year. And so that's worldwide, of course, but those are projects that will not be around to supply more oil to the world when the world needs it. I expect we'll still see short-term new supply come on, especially from places like Iran. But we are going to reach the point where certain projects should have been put in place, but it hasn't been worth anybody's time or trouble to do it. And so that means that we will see a crimp in supply as global demand keeps rising. In the past year, global oil demand has increased 1.4 million barrels per day. Now, global oil supply has gone up 2 million barrels. No wonder the price has gone down. But supply won't keep going up if prices stay low. Demand seems to be increasing, especially because oil prices are low, and eventually things will tip back the other way.
I've also heard, too, that the technology that improves the way that you can be more efficient bringing oil out of the ground keeps improving drastically. In the last year or two, they've improved their efficiency in the oil patch by 25 to 30%.
Sometimes even more. In the Bakken, there are certain places where they can pull oil out of the ground for like $30 a barrel, $29 a barrel. Down in like South Texas, they have seen their costs get cut in half at the same time that their production goes higher, which again makes it easier to actually pump oil. So you look at those things, and yes, there are places where even at current prices, we'll probably see new drilling. Now, there are places where people shouldn't be drilling, but what if that's a heavily indebted company, and the only way it can possibly make its loans is to keep some kind of cash flow? In that case, that's a company that's going to keep producing as long as it can to try and cover some of that debt. There's a lot of things shorter term that actually point to higher production. This will all sort itself out in the market eventually, and then we can look forward to what comes next. But I think that lower for longer, that's what we'll see oil prices. But again, there are lots of winners from that too. Cruise lines, airlines, certainly automobile manufacturers, because everyone drives more when the price of gasoline is so low. And of course, people in Canada are like hearing this and saying, the price of gasoline is low. And believe me, I feel for you, my Canadian friends. But down here in the States, we are really having very cheap gasoline prices. And so people are just zipping up and down the highways. Our use of gasoline has gone up 6.5% in just the last year alone.
And I guess for Canadian oil producers, that's good news if there's bigger demand south of the border, because we are your biggest trading partner when it comes to oil.
Yes, absolutely. Though I think Mexico is going to give you a run for the money. We'll have to see how that works out, right? I mean, because that's another thing that could weigh on the oil market is Mexico's going to liberalize its oil market, which means that we'll have, private capital going in there, assuming there are fields down in Mexico that are financially viable at recent prices. That means we'll see those fields developed, and we'll see more oil coming out of Mexico. Now, no, I don't think Mexico can ever meet Canada for what you guys actually produce, which is a tremendous amount, and it's a strong leg for the Canadian economy to stand on. I just think most people in Canada would feel a little safer if the price of oil was a little higher and actually supporting a lot of businesses there. We'll see how that goes.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after this.
More and more people are looking to the Internet. for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. You said gold right now is a good news, bad news commodity. What's the bad news first?
Well, all right. The bad news is that as unsettled as things are in China, prices should have gone higher for longer. But then they just kind of fell apart really quickly. I think because people are realizing that the problems in China aren't quite that bad. But one thing we are seeing, and this is some good news, is that Chinese imports through Hong Kong are really starting to head higher again. And so one of the things weighing on the gold market was that we saw those imports slow down for a long time. And so people saying, you know what, the Chinese just aren't going to purchase as much gold. I think the Chinese are more scared about this stuff than we are. Well, for obvious reasons they would be. And so gold might be one thing that they want to fall back on. But for whatever reason, they are importing more gold through Hong Kong, and that points to generally more imports, more consumption of gold in China. And so that's generally bullish for the price of gold, and so people should keep an eye on that. I think that's one of the things that the market really isn't paying attention to right now. Miners are dirt cheap. They can get cheaper. I already recommended some, and we're underwater, just on a couple. But I think people can nibble here. If you see a company that can support itself at recent prices, I don't think gold will be going below 1,000, though I can always be surprised. But if you can see a company that supports itself at that level, it has really good management, it's expanding its resources, lowering costs even more, that's the kind of company that can really do well despite the short-term movements in the market.
I heard some advice today. They said to stay wealthy or to improve your wealth, it's not so much timing as just time. If you're patient, things like gold will work out.
Well, yes, of course, the phrase that would run counter to that is, in the long run, we're all dead. So I would like to be richer sooner, and I think most people would be. It is kind of hard to find things in this market that actually stay on course for more than 5 minutes. I mean, it seems like the trends change every time you move away from the TV, you come back, there's a brand new trend, and whatever you owned before is being killed. That's upsetting for anybody, and believe me, if you're experiencing that, you aren't alone. However, there are things that are starting to look good again. For example, there was a huge sell-off in the cybersecurity sector when everything was sold off. A lot of people grabbed profits there and sold it down. Meanwhile, that's a sector that's booming. In fact, the U.S. There's the U.S. federal court just ruled that the FTC can now sue companies that don't provide safe internet. So the big case before it was Wyndham Hotels. Apparently people were staying there, and over the course of 2 years, hackers stole enough data, credit cards and whatnot, to then turn around and steal $600 million worth of stuff. And so the court says Wyndham Hotels should have had a much more secure internet than they did. Think of all the companies around you that provide Wi-Fi and stuff, because they have to. Hotels, not only that, coffee shops and stuff like that. If they're going to start to be held responsible for that stuff, there's going to be a tremendous amount of more money spent on cybersecurity. So you don't always have to look at oil and just get really bummed out because the price of oil is down. Yes, you can go bargain hunting there, but you can also follow the big trends that are happening elsewhere in the world. Cybersecurity is one of them. Real estate, I think, is starting to look hot again for a whole bunch of reasons. Well, maybe not Canadian real estate, but I'll speak to U.S. real estate. It looks good. And there are things that look good right now that seem to have longer-term trends that I think that with this recent market pullback, now's the time when you can really shop for those bargains and ride those longer-term trends, and you can do pretty well.
Well, when you said cybersecurity, I'm thinking of the Ashley Madison scandal right now, where 32 million names have been provided. We don't know if they're real names or not, but they are being sued for a lack of security.
Yes, that's a horrible story. Apparently, 2 people may have committed suicide because of that. And I just saw a like news flash on that. They think they've narrowed it down to who did it. It was an inside job. It was a woman working at the Ashley Madison site, and apparently either ticked off at her employers or maybe her husband was having an affair. I don't know why, but for some reason she leaked that. So yes, that's like I have to admit, and this makes me sound like an idiot, I didn't know Ashley Madison existed before all this happened. It was like wild. And like, where do people find out a time? That's the thing that gets me. Who has that much time to devote to like, investing in all these cyber affairs? Like, mother of God. I don't have time to take my car down to the car wash, and these people have much more free time than I do. We've had one shocking thing after another down here in the U.S., and now those companies can be sued. For example, like Target, which had a huge credit card fraud where all these numbers were stolen, right? Well, now the FTC is looking at maybe taking action against them because of what they did, and because they were not protecting their clients' numbers well enough. And so now you can imagine that ripple through the corporate world. Are we providing enough cybersecurity? Do we need to boost up cybersecurity? I think the answer to that last question is going to be yes, and that's why you are really going to see more spending on this, especially because now they can be held liable for these things. That's just a tremendous sea change in that market.
That's amazing what a single lawsuit can do, huh?
Yeah, well, who knows? I suppose Wyndham Hotels could appeal that ruling all the way to the Supreme Court. We'll see if they have grounds to do that. There always has to be grounds for an appeal, of course. So we'll see how that holds. But if it holds up, yeah, that's huge. And there's other things going on as well. I mean, there's all sorts of new things going on. For example, speaking of the Internet of Things, which is where you hook in everything in your house and you can run it from your phone. Now, assuming you don't get hacked, that's a great thing. But that's another thing that might boost cybersecurity. At the same time, companies that do the Internet of Things, that stuff is just booming because it's just so much easier to run things from one central device and not have to worry about everything else. We Americans, we're couch potatoes. We love to sit on the couch and run everything from the remote control. Just don't lose the remote control, of course.
Well, I've heard of a case already where a refrigerator was used to hack into somebody's computer.
Yes. And what's even more vulnerable than that? Thermostats. The electronic computerized thermostats. Apparently, there are simple enough hacks. I was just reading about this because this is a thing that absolutely fascinates me. They weren't made as unhackable as you might think. Another thing that was really fascinating is which car manufacturer was it? I think GM, but I don't want to say that for certain because I can't remember. But they found out that the electronic systems in their cars could be hacked. It was only one make of car, but the beauty of it is that each of these cars had a little thumb drive thing where you could just plug in, right? So they sent everyone who owned one of those cars a thumb drive so they could upload something to fix that hack. But it makes you wonder, how vulnerable are these cars that, you can actually fix or unfix them through the thumb drive access port in the car? It's just, there is a lot in this Internet of Things that's scary. There's a lot in certainly cybersecurity that's scary, but there's a lot of opportunity as well. There's a lot going on, and I just think that we are really on the cusp of a tremendous opportunity. And so there's just so much for people to do, ways to invest, that kind of thing. It's really going to be a lot of fun.
Sean, thank you very much for chatting with us.
Hey, my pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you, and just thanks for giving me a call.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Natural Resource Specialist at the Oxford Club. His website, investmentu.com, you being the letter U. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.